ethics did not prevent us from nuking entire cities when the stakes were high enough. So handing over the decision to kill humans to machines if the stakes are high enough and if it gives you some sort of an advantage over an adversary, I think it's going to be a very, very tempting option. And if one adversary takes it, I don't see how the other is also not going to fall for it. Peter Singer and many others that I have tried to assure us that the technology very much already exists, and by the day it has been perfected, AI will be able to take controversially better decisions than humans in the future, apparently.
Right, thank you. I think one interesting technology which has emerged in this war is the drone. We need to hear a little more about the drone. Pushkar, could you be telling us something for that?
Thank you, sir. Firstly, Saurabh, something that we were talking, even AK sir, we were talking about the systems being totally manned and totally unmanned. I think the manned unmanned would be, the order of the day. The purely unmanned, we have robotics and all coming up. I think it will take a long time to come in. Maybe the monkeys are the, maybe that is somewhere that we look at in the first. Coming to what the journalist asked me to say, gentlemen, take your mind back about, I won't go into major, tank equipment and all, a patrol of about 25, 30 people going into a counter-insurgency area, and suddenly they are thrown in with about 100 swarms. No one knows where they are coming from, and all armed with just about 10 grams of explosive. Can you imagine what is the impact on the soldier or the impact on the complete army going to be? Drones are they started off in the Yom Kippur in 73 between Arab and Israel, and Israelis had really. But basically after that, what happened is one of the leading Israeli scientists had moved on to the US. In fact, his leading systems, his drone company almost went bankrupt. He migrated to the US and then gave right to the Predator and the Grey Eagle and what have you today. But coming back to how drones got into their way, in March 2020, a very interesting thing happened. As a retaliation to the killing of some Turkish soldiers, the Turks, they brought in, that is the first time actually we heard of the Bayraktar TV-2. They brought in their Bayraktar, stayed outside the AD range, and when I talk of AD, the Syrians had probably the best AD that was to offer towards this side of the world. The Russians were already there in 2016. And approximately 55 tanks, I'll just read out, 3 after 18 other AFVs, and 21 and 27 other military vehicles destroyed within a span of 2 hours. Nobody knew, it was clueless. People started talking about it. Then I was also the DA at Armenia. So I studied the Armenia-Azerbaijan war very strongly. And this is where it came. The Armenia-Azerbaijan war, what happened was that the Artsakh, as the Armenians started calling it, the Azeris lost the war in 91, and they lost a large chunk. So they were already wanting to get back. And slowly they started tying up with the Turks, and very, very surprisingly with the Israelis. If you see the configuration of the world, Israelis and Azeris should actually not be, but lots of them, someone can ask me this question over a cup of tea, I'll probably be able to give you. But then they use the Bayraktars, TB2s, in such a great way that a total of 563 out of 736 pieces of equipment that Armenians lost were due to the TB2s. 75% of the equipment. That is where the advent of the killer drone actually started. The US used them in Iraq and all, they started using them for others. But interestingly, this drone, because when I talk of technology in a while, this drone was formed by Mr. Erdogan, that is the present Erdogan's father, in 1984, and it took him almost about 30 years for the real Bayraktars and Akinci, which is now coming into place. So technology takes a long time. And by the way, Erdogan, Bayraktar is the son-in-law of Erdogan. Many people may not know about it. Now, drones, what is the advantage of drones? Before I get on to the real this thing, it's a very cheap form of attack. The gentleman mentioned about it. Very, very cheap form of attack. Today you can use a small drone. It carries a small, payload, and you can drop it over an innocent. It's that simple. And it is used for a lot of other means, but we won't cover that because that will probably take us into the better time of the day. I also won't bore you with the jargon as to how a drone, it has a RF signal, it has a GPS, and how it can be controlled, how it can be jammed, how it can be spoofed. There are a lot of issues, but that maybe we'll leave it for some other time. But let me now focus on the Russia-Ukraine war. The Russia-Ukraine war, as I was studying it, I thought I would cover it in 3 distinct phases, probably about 3 odd months each. In the first phase, what happened was that the Russian tanks started crawling north, northwest, east, south, from all sides. And the diktat given was to reach the built-up areas of that is Kiev, Kharkiv, many parts of Donetsk and even down south. And now the orders were to move fast. So in that what happened was they moved outside the Aegean River. And that is when the problem started. They had tank ambushes and the Bayraktars. And the destruction was as many as approximately 80 pieces of equipment were destroyed, among which there were about 15 SAM systems, which were very, very costly systems. And the Russians got onto the back foot. Then coming on to the second phase of the battle, what happened was the Panjshir S-1 system, which is the leading, gun missile system that the Russians had, they modified it. They modified it in that they upgraded the range, the target tracking capability from 12 went on to 40, and the speed went on to 1200 meters per second. And I'm sure all of you would agree, there was an article, the Bayraktars are falling. The Bayraktars started getting dropped. And this was the second phase where actually the drones were taken out. So it's a great lesson for us that in case our AD systems are strong enough and in case we have a strong Atmanirbharta, as it's being used now, so we'll have this thing happening. And the Bayraktars were actually taken off. Now whether that happened or there was some other tacit understanding between Putin and Erdogan is to be seen. Because now when we see the gas deal and all, so these are things. Now come to the phase 3. The Russians had the Zalas, which they had used initially, but now they modified the Zalas. Then they had the Shahid 136. I must talk about this. The Russians call it the Chiranian. What they did was, it had an inertial navigation system. They just changed the navigation system. They were not happy with it because it could be. They put the GLONASS on it. And what happened was, almost 20 to 30% destruction that are having today is from the Russian drones. They are actually Iranian drones, that is Shahid 136. So it is actually from the first phase of the war to now the current phase of the war is just the opposite. Today we actually don't hear it. You do hear of LLAW, you do hear of switchblades, but today you don't hear of the Ukrainian drones because they actually learned it the hard way. Yeah, please.
Stop here. What you said is right. You just don't hear of these initial game changers. The switchblades, the Javelin, and HIMARS, they were all switchblade. They were all absolutely new weapons which were seen in action here, and they really changed things. But they've suddenly gone off. Do you think the Americans only provided a few pieces to be experimented with?
No, there's a very.
And I want to just add a little. I think America is very much involved with Taiwan and Korea to be sparing too much of their niche weapons in Ukraine.
So you're wrong as well as right. I'll tell you why. Now, where are the predators? Where are the grey eagles? Where are those high talked of? Where are the stealth? As far as the Russians go, why didn't they use the S-400? Why haven't they used the much touted, Armatas? Why not? They've already got to S-500. So all this is linked with any piece of equipment destroyed in this conflict leads to a controversy. We are not talking of info warfare. This is actually warfare in the drawing rooms. Actually, they have not, this is not at all a technology war. Probably, okay, I'll go over it, so then we'll hear it. Then, what is the other technology that the Russians used? I must talk on something called the hypersonics. Hypersonics were the first time used. The biaxles were used earlier, the switchblade were used earlier, the NLAW of course for a very long time. Now, very interestingly, the hypersonic technology was first used by the US Army. They started their research in the late 90s. And somewhere in about 2010, 2012, they realized that it is too costly a technology to follow. And that is when the other country picked up. Today, you have Russians, you would have heard of the Kinzhal. The Kinzhal was the ones that they used on Odessa, the first use of hypersonic technology. Kinzhal is a 2000 kilometer Mach 10 to 12, and it's been serving, and the latest was done in 2018, in fact 2019 when I was there. And then it's actually a hypersonic cruise missile. And they have another hypersonic cruise missile, which I have not heard of being used, which is called the Zircon. It's a Mach 9 missile. And these are the two hypersonics they have, that is the cruise. But they have something called a master missile, which is actually called the Avangard. Many people may have heard of it. Now it's a MIRV. It can go up to space, and the speed is achieved at 27 Mach. 27 Mach